Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we are going to cover how to say probably noun or probably adjective or probably verb by using the plain form of a noun, an adjective, or a verb, plus the phrase deshou. So as we know from what I just said, really, anything that we use here, whatever it is, a noun, an adjective, or a verb, it's going to need to be in its plain form so that we can add deshou after it and the whole phrase can mean what we want it to mean, which is basically probably blank, and the blank is going to be the adjective, the noun, or the verb. So that's intuitive enough, but there is a couple of tidbits of things to know beforehand. The first one is that when we are using this construct with a na-adjective or a noun, and the sentence itself is in the present tense basically, we are not going to use des or da right after the na-adjective or the noun right before we put deshou. We're not going to use da or des at all. But when it's not in the present tense, if it's in the past tense or the negative form, or some other thingamajigger, we are going to use the respective conjugation of des for non-adjectives and nouns. So for instance, if it was the past tense, then we would need to keep it plain, but we would use the past, so we would use datta, and that would appear right after the non-adjective or right after the noun before we put deshou. And if it was in the negative form, then we would have something like janai right after the non-adjective, right after the noun, before deshou. That's just the little abnormality of using this grammar pattern with non-adjectives or nouns, and that actual little condition actually exists for a few other grammar patterns, so it might be good to commit that to memory just because you'll rehash it with other constructs later, or even before technically, because we have covered some grammar patterns that do the same thing. But yeah, I digress. The last thing to know here is that this grammar pattern is commonly used with the word tabun, which is gonna translate to really mean probably itself, so it seems kind of weird that we're using probably twice in the same sentence, but that's just the way it works in Japanese. So if you see tabun in a sentence like this, it's just what that means. It means probably again. So that's the introduction. Now let's go into some example sentence. So for our first example, we have the line Kanojo no kaban wa arimasen. Tabun mo uchi ni kaetta deshou. And what this line is going to translate to is something along the lines of her bag isn't here, she probably already left for home. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have Kanojo no kaban, and this is just the noun of the noun modification like we've always done. It's going to be her bag because Kanojo means girl or her. We have no. Then we have kaban, which is the noun for bag basically. So the bag of her bag. And right after that we have wa arimasen, and this is just going to be the negative form of aru. So if aru means to exist basically or to be, this is going to be to not be, and this is going to more naturally translate as it is not here. After that we have the second sentence, and that starts with tabun, which is again going to mean probably here. We have mo, which is going to mean already. We've covered that in a previous video. Right after that we have uchi, which is going to be home or house, and we have ni, marking it as the destination or the location of something, the location of the action that's about to happen as indicated by the verb that's about to come. We have kaetta, which is going to be the verb kaeru in its past plain form. So if kaeru means to return, then kaetta is going to be returned. And right after that we have deshou, because deshou follows after the plain form of the verb to make it probably verb. So this is going to be probably returned already. Combine that with the rest of what we have, and her bag isn't here, she probably returned or already left for home. Kanojo no kaban wa arimasen. Tabun mo uchi ni kaetta deshou. For our next example sentence, we have the lines Sono shiken wa tabun totemo muzukashii deshou. And this line here is going to simply translate to that test is probably really hard. Breaking down the sentence, first up we have sono, which is going to mean that. Shiken means test. We have wa, marking it as the topic of the sentence. We have totemo, which is the adverb that means really or very. It's going to modify the adjective that's about to follow, which is muzukashii. It's an e adjective. It's in its plain form already. We don't have to add anything or drop anything. And since it's in its plain form, now we can just put deshou right after it, and that ends the sentence. So sono shiken wa tabun totemo muzukashii deshou is going to be that test is probably very hard. For our next example sentence, we're going to use a na-adjective with this grammar construct, and we have the line Kare wa mainichi hamburger o taberu kara tabun suki deshou. And this line here is going to translate to since he eats hamburgers every day, he probably likes them. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up we have kare, it's going to be him or he. We have wa, marking him as the topic of the sentence. We have mainichi, which is going to mean every day. We have hamburger, which is going to be hamburgers. We have o, marking hamburgers as the direct object of the verb taberu. Taberu is going to leave it in its plain form, its dictionary form here. After taberu, we have kara, so it's going to be because of everything that was just listed. So because he eats hamburgers every day. And now we move on to the second part of the sentence that has the grammar construct here. It's going to start with tabun, which again means probably. Then we have ski, which is just going to be a not-adjective basically. And since it is a not-adjective in its present tense here, we don't have to add the des or the da because it's just the guidelines of this grammar construct. So we're just going to simply follow that with deshou, and it's going to mean probably likes. Combine that with the rest of the sentence. Since he eats hamburgers every day, because he eats hamburgers every day, he likes them, right? Or he probably likes them, or he likely likes them. Kare wa mainichi hamburger o taberu kara tabun suki deshou. For our last example sentence, we'll use a noun now, and for our line we have ano hito wa bakupaku ga aru kara tabun gakusei deshou. And what this line is saying is just basically, since he has a backpack, he's probably a student, right? Or he's a student, right? Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have ano hito, which is going to be that person. We have wa, marking that person as the topic of the sentence. We have bakupaku, which is just going to be the katakana for backpack. We have ga aru, and that's modifying backpack, so it just means has a backpack. That person has a backpack. We have the particle kara to mean because. Then right after that, we have the grammar construct that we're using here. Tabun means probably. Gakusei is a noun for student, and then we modify gakusei with deshou, so it's probably student. Ano hito wa backpaku ga aru kara tabun gakusei deshou. That person has a backpack, so he is probably a student. And so yeah, that is using the plain form of something plus the phrase deshou to mean probably that thing that we used. And we've covered examples that use a verb, an example that uses an e-adjective, an example that uses a non-adjective, an example that uses a noun. So all the bases are pretty much covered, and hopefully that was a good introduction on how to use this statement that means probably adjective or probably noun or probably verb.